All right, we're going to try this again. Technical difficulties and solar eclipse can just get out of the interwebs. I am excited that we have Trudi Kayser with us from Five Rings Financial, because this month, the month of April, in many places, as well as here at Parent Tween Village and Parent Tween Connection, April is Financial Literacy Month. So first things first, Trudi, can you hear me?
I can, very well.
Okay,
can you hear
good.
me?
So second, okay. Yes, I can hear you. And second, officially, welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right. So Trudi, one of the things that I know that you talk a lot about is that people avoid talking about money because they think they don't understand it. We tend to avoid it. We tend to have like a love-frustration relationship with money. We love it when it comes in, and we get frustrated because it feels like it goes out so much more quickly than it comes in. And so I know a lot of the work that you do with families and parents, kids in general, is making sure that they actually understand how money works. And so let's start with talking about saving money.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. First of all, I really appreciate being able to share what we share across the country on a weekly basis at Five Rings Financial, and that is literacy, right? A lot of people that we work with are middle-income Americans, people just like you and I, Clarissa, and we were never taught about money in school. In fact, I wasn't even taught how to save. I just watched my parents, and I basically did what they did or didn't do. It's more like it, right?
Right.
And so I was raised by a very poor family. And so I really didn't know how to save until I literally found this company and they taught me how to save. So there's 3 principles for saving money that really help people in their mindset when they're in this journey, right, on how to save money. And the first one is understanding year old who is going to start saving money. We like to talk about the $5 a day plan. So there is a concept called the $5 a day plan. Clarissa, do you think you could save $5 a day? Pretty simple, right? Sounds pretty simple. It's just $5 a day. Maybe we drink one less Starbucks, whatever, right? Maybe we don't go down to the store and buy some extra chapstick, right? And right. So we take that $5, and if you get a really good interest rate, let's say 8% for 40 years, you'll have $500,000 in that account. Now, most people think they have to save a lot of money to get there, but I mean, it's just really time value of money. If you have time and you have money and you have a return, then you're always going to get great. But if you don't have equal amounts of each, or if you have less time and more money, or if you have less time, you're going to need more money. If you have less money, you're going to need more time, right? So there's right. All these factors. The time value of money is really important to understand. And then the compound interest is rule number 2, and that is learning the rule of 72. Learning how compound interest works for you and learning how compound interest works against you. A real easy, so Einstein, big guy, crazy hair, right? Remember Einstein, smartest guy in the world. His estate still earns millions, $56 million a year due to compound interest.
Wow.
And he died in the 50s, 60s. So it's really, compound interest is really, really important to know how it works. And it's really easy if you use the rule of 72. You take the number 72 and you divide it into the amount of interest that you're earning on an account. So let's say you're earning 1%, like a lot of 401ks are, 1 to 3% a year. So if you're earning 1% and you use the rule of 72, divide that into 72, what is your answer? 72 times, right? So that means that it's going to take 72 years for your money to double using a 1% interest rate.
Okay.
So you want to be sure that you do the math. 4%, it does every 18 years, 8% every 6 years, 12% every, so you, I'm sorry, 8% is every 9 years, 12% is every 6 years. So it's really
Right.
important to know how compound interest works for you and also against you. Like, you think those credit card companies, 18%, how would you like to get 18%? Your money would double every 4 years. And if you miss a payment, they jack it up to what, 25%, 24.99%?
Yep.
And then when is your money going to double? What, every 4? It's a lot, right? Every 4 years, your money's going to, that interest is going to double if you keep paying the minimum payment. So it's really, really important to understand how compound interest works. And then understanding how taxable versus non-taxable accounts work. In a taxable account, let's talk about non-taxable accounts first. So non-taxable accounts, if I were to go to a wealthy person and say, I'm going to give you all, and I want to double it every year for you for 20 years. I'm not going to take out any taxes or fees out of this account. And if you were to do that, $1 doubles to 2, 2 doubles to 4, 4 doubles to 8, and so on and so forth for 20 years, you would have $1,048,000 in that account. Pretty crazy, right? Pretty cool. Now, if I went to middle income American and I said, hey, I'm going to give you the same deal. I'm going to give you $1 and it's going to double every year. They would go to the bank probably, and they would get a CD because that's what their parents told them to do. Mm-hmm. And they would pay probably, let's just say they pay a 28% tax rate, right? So if they that first year, their dollar is going to double to $2. They're going to get charged tax. So they're going to only have $1.72. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Then we're going to double that $1.72 to $3.09, and that's going to double and tax down. And we're going to do that because that's kind of what we do with our paychecks, right?
Right.
We're going to double and tax, and we're going to tax that down for 20 years. How much do you think will be in that account? I'll tell you, Clarissa, the first time I heard this, I thought, well, if it's a 28% tax bracket, then I'm going to have $750,000 in that account. I should have $750,000. Doesn't that make sense? It's 30%. That's about right, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't actually work that way, does it?
Mm-hmm. No. Most people guess $250,000. Now, mind you, you're giving up a bunch of money.
Uh-huh. That's a huge, huge difference, yes?
48. $51,353 in that account. Is that a big difference or a little difference?
That's a huge difference.
It's huge. It's just $1 million difference, right? And people say, Trudi, now wait, so if you save me this money in this account with no taxes come out of that account, no fees came out of that account, nothing. That's just doubling your money, right? So let's say that you did have to pay taxes on that account and it was 50%. Highest tax bracket in the country. Still $524,000. That's still 10 times what you would get if you doubled and taxed, if you paid your taxes every year in a savings account. So that makes sense. Always try to save your money in a non-taxable account. So that's the first 3 principles of saving money. If you know those 3 principles, it's really easy to make decisions where to save your money, what to save your money for. We'll get into, I think we're going to talk about managing money later in our next segment, but this one is so super important. I think you're going to ask me about wording about money now, maybe?
Yeah, because, well, it's the 3 principles on saving, but then also 3 principles about how to protect money before we go talking about the mindset and the language that we use around money.
Yeah. So a lot of us say this, I can't afford to save. Have you heard that?
Huh?
Hell, I've said it.
I was going to say, maybe I even said it somewhere along the way.
Yeah. It's really important to understand that and to learn and practice and create a habit of using our language to create our life, not describe it.
Yep.
And I have someone at my door right now. Oh, please. Unbelievable. I should have left my door open. Anyway, it's really important to understand that we need to use language to create our life, not define it. And
Right.
so that very statement, I can't afford to save, implies that we think saving is spending. Does it not?
Right. Yeah. No, I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, that makes sense.
So when we really understand that saving is not spending, and we perceive that it's allocating our money somewhere else, it's still there. It's just allocating our money somewhere else into a different account. For
Right.
me, I do it because out of sight, out of mind.
Amen.
I have severe ADHD, impulsive spending problems. Like I'm just here to be honest with you. I may do finances and I help people with finances, but I suffer from all of these things. And my language was terrible when it came to money. So when you understand that what you have to change your perception, we perceive saving as spending. A lot of people in this country do nowadays. That's what we say. And therefore, we're creating our lives. The words that come out of our mouth are like spells. That's why they call it spelling, right? We're spelling our lives with these words, and we're creating our lives. When in reality, we're just saying, I'm just describing what's going on right now. Stop describing what's going on right now. Let's use our language to create something else. So up until recently, I couldn't afford to save. But now I'm choosing to save.
Right.
$1 here. And I don't mean save by spending. There's two different kinds of saving, right? There's people that save money by going to 5 different stores and buying everything on sale, because that's saving to them.
Sure.
And there's people who are choosing to save money by managing their money. And our next segment, we'll talk about that management of the money. But that's really, really the big one. That's the big one. If you're going to change anything, if you hear your language saying that, or I can't afford that, yes, you can. You're just allocating your money to other things.
So can you give us some examples of some ways that we can speak differently? Because I can totally hear in my head from my experiences and from many of the experiences of the folks around me going, okay, Trudi, but if I can't afford it, if it's not in the budget, it's not in the budget. Like, and that's, I can see that there's a perception that is a cold hard truth. Right. So what are some other options that we can say?
Then say that it's not in my budget. Doesn't that sound more empowering than I can't afford it?
It's certainly less victim mentality sounding.
Yeah, you've made a choice at that point, right? Because you can certainly put it in your budget or your spending plan that I like to have. I like to call it a spending plan.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in essence. It's just using words that will help us lean into instead of back off from. Right?
Yeah.
If budget makes us feel uncomfortable and feel restricted, then we're going to back off and we're not going to do it. But it's the same thing if we call it a spending plan. It's a plan to spend money.
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense.
But I feel so much better making a spending plan, right? And it's just these little tweaks. It's just the little tweaks, right? I talk about this a lot on Instagram. I talk about this a lot. I do a lot of posts on Facebook about this a lot too. But the bottom line is we speak look around you. Everything that has to do with money, you have spoken into existence using your language. And it was implanted in us as children, basically. It's what happens. And it's that internal language that we hear all the time. And it just takes practice, right? It's just, and being aware of it is the first thing. Right? Like,
sure thing.
Oh, I just said that. And it's always using that term up until recently, then say the word that
Okay.
you just said. But
Right.
now I do this. That will
Right.
literally reprogram your brain. It'll reprogram the neural pathways to start, because you're not denying that you did it before. We usually want to do
Sure.
that with affirmations, right? Like, I am
Right.
so good with money. No, I'm not. I love money. No, you don't. Da, da, da. None of that stuff works. Those
Right.
affirmations surrounding money, the reason you're not getting rich from them is because they're not going to work if you don't believe them.
Sure.
You have to state declarations and intentions when it comes to money.
Sure.
I love
Okay.
all the affirmations and stuff. They're great. They're fantastic and la, 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 la. But they just don't work.
Fair enough. So up until
Intention,
recently,
up
blah, blah,
until
blah, blah, blah.
recently, blah, 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 blah. But now I'm choosing this. I mean, we could
Yeah.
all afford Rolls Royces right now, but we have to pay our rent instead, right? We have to pay our mortgage instead.
True
Am I
statement.
correct? So we're really choosing to pay rent, not purchase a Rolls Royce. Is that making
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
if you tend to look at it that way, we don't judge ourselves then for these decisions that we make. Because when we start judging ourselves, we start comparing ourselves. And what's the thief of joy? Comparison.
Absolutely. Well, and the
Yeah.
up until recently, but now I think that may be the most powerful thing that you can share with folks, Trudy.
Yeah.
And thankfully we didn't have any tech issues as you were sharing that, because it seems like the
Okay.
gremlins have worked themselves out. But that can really be applicable to any behavior change we'd like to make, right? Up until
And
recently, I lost my marbles every time my kids asked me for something, but now I'm able to breathe through it and make
right.
different decisions and
Mhm.
respond differently.
It's huge. It's
That
huge.
is
And
that
be
might be my
more
favorite
specific about it. Yeah.
that might be
It's
my
huge.
favorite aspect of conversation today. All right.
Yay.
So we talked about some 5 principles of saving money, and then we talked about
Mhm.
how we want to change the mindset around money, or how we can change the language that we use around money. How can people find you if they've got questions?
They can find me at you can go to lmtophx.com. That's the best place to find me. lmtophx.com.
Okay.
My business name is
And
like long.
right. Fair enough. Good. So now what we're going to do, having had this snippet of conversation already, we are going to, Trudy and I, that is, are going to pop over into the Parentween Village and have a conversation there about ADHD and money, which you identified that you have some pretty crazy ADHD presentations. I have an awful lot of ADHD tendencies. And I know that as adults, if we don't necessarily learn some of these things, we can't pass these skills and tools onto our kids, whether or not we have ADHD. But certainly having ADHD adds a complexity to the situation as well, in things like impulse control, impulse spending,
Big
and
time.
actually managing the money more effectively, because it's really easy to get bored by the process, and
Mhm.
boredom is the death of an ADHDer. So we're going to pop over and do that for folks who haven't joined Parentween Village yet. If you'd like to, pop on over to parentweenconnection.com and click on the For Families tab on the left, or in the menu when it drops down on the left, and you can learn more about Parentween Village there. So, Trudy, thank you. Thank you for your patience through the technical challenges, and we
Very
will
well.
see you in Parentween Village here very shortly.
Okay.